ICE has executed, killed another legal observer. It is a very sad reality we are living in. Put up the picture full mass. Federal agent executed a legal observer during an anti-ICE protest in Minneapolis. This is 37-year-old Alex Pretti, model citizen, registered nurse at a Veterans Affairs facility, cared about helping others in their time of crisis, remembered as a kind soul by everyone who knew him. He simply wanted to help people. In his final moments, he was legally observing and helping a woman who was being brutalized by federal agents. Here's a CNN analysis.
We have this new angle of the video that's just been cleared by CNN, and it shows the lead up to this deadly altercation. This is what I want you to take a look at. Of course, this is disturbing video. Let's take some time though and watch this together. Some things to note. As it begins, you see Pretti out there in the middle of the street. He shows up right in this area here. You start seeing him, and he is at one point using his camera. There he is, right there, and he's pointing to traffic, sort of waving traffic through. At some moment here, you see that law enforcement approaches him, and he backs away as they start moving up on him. He is not trying to move toward them. He's backing away. Then you're going to see one of these officers approach a woman near him and really forcefully shove her to the ground right there. And Pretti starts rushing over toward her. Now, they're both getting pepper sprayed at this point. He gets grabbed, and he's taken over to the ground here. I'll point out this is about 15 seconds from when officers turned to him. He's now on the ground. They are on top of him. The officers are all around. He does not appear to have a weapon in his hand. He doesn't brandish anything. He doesn't seem to do anything. And then all of a sudden you see one agent in the middle there. Look, he turns away, and that's when the shooting begins. One shot followed by, in our analysis, 9 other shots there.
What does that look like to you? Law enforcement engaging in official law enforcement duties, protecting and serving? I think not. Regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your partisan appetite, what you saw was an execution. Put his picture back up. What you saw was an individual who has dedicated his life to actually trying to become the best among us, engaging in service to other people. He's off the clock. He's volunteering his time as a medical provider, as somebody who understands how to help the human body survive. He's a volunteer outside of his 9 to 5. They're killing volunteers. He happens to be employed as a VA nurse. He's rendering aid outside of his 9 to 5. That's called heart. That's called heart. So on top of this, after the brutality, a bystander, a physician, a medical doctor attempted to render medical aid. They were initially prevented from doing so. Quote, "At first, the ICE agents would not let me through," they said. Quote, "But none of the ICE agents who were near the victim were performing CPR. And I could tell that the victim was in critical condition. I insisted that the ICE agents let me assess him," end quote. When the physician finally convinced the agents to let them through, they said they were confused as to why the victim was on his side, but instead of checking his pulse or performing CPR, the officers appeared to be counting his bullet wounds. Another witness detailed, quote, "The agents pulled the man on the ground. I didn't see him touch any of them. He wasn't even turned toward them. It didn't look like he was trying to resist, just trying to help the woman up. I didn't see him with a gun. They threw him to the ground. 4 or 5 agents had him on the ground and they just started shooting him. They shot him so many times. I feel afraid. Only hours have passed since they shot a man right in front of me, and I don't feel like I can go home because I heard agents were looking for me. I don't know what the agents will do when they find me. I do know that they're not telling the truth about what happened. I've heard that other witnesses might have been arrested and taken to the Whipple building." End quote. That's a witness. It's a brave human being who has just saw murder. And that person is going on record about what they saw. Now keep in mind, the video footage is not coming from ICE. They were unaware of the captured footage. So according to the witness, according to the bystander who became a witness, according to them, they were trying to cover this up in real time by arresting individuals who may have seen what they did. Once again, this is what we know about on the record. They may have been successful at doing this before, and we are unaware. These accounts directly contradict the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and the explanation given on the record. Then they tried to tamper with the evidence. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension said the Department of Homeland Security prevented their investigators from assessing the scene of where a Border Patrol agent fatally shot a man in Minneapolis. That's called obstruction of justice. Judge blocks the feds from destroying evidence in the Minnesota shooting. This is DH's response. Homeland Security. All right, so at the time given, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. Let's see, this is the spin they give in their official response. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers at with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun seen here. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines, no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. About 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. This situation is evolving and more information is forthcoming. Lies. All lies, not a hint of truth. They're not spinning narratives, they are making them up. Lies. We have video. We got footage. We have pictures. We have eyewitness testimony of individuals who do not know each other saying the same thing. And the commonality is that DHS is lying. Stephen Miller had a take on this. Put it up. Stephen Miller says, a would-be assassin tried to murder federal law enforcement, and the official Democrat account sides with the terrorists. Keep that up for a moment. I want you to understand this is how everyone should know it was a lie in the beginning. They're working so hard without any investigation, without any corroborating witness, without anybody from the scene backing them up. They're working so hard with pundits and political cronies to spin a narrative against a beautiful soul who worked as a nurse at a VA hospital helping veterans survive, was volunteering his time trying to help people survive ICE in that city. So they decided to tell you, well, he's basically a terrorist. Yeah. Yeah, he came there to do, we think, maybe massacre law enforcement. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, that'll get him. I expect corruption from corrupt people. No surprise. Doesn't even really disappoint me. It's just who they are, at least who they choose to be in this moment. So we fight back. We understand who the enemy is. But the part that disappoints me are the individuals who believe the lie because somehow it reaffirms some innate bias they may already have. You see, they, the powers that be, are utilizing those individuals as their pawns for this proxy war. And that becomes the fight. Misinformation and disinformation runs rapid, believe me, I know. But their aim is to transform the narrative in the minds of individuals who are gullible and also probably racist. The parents of this beautiful soul released a statement about their son's murder, and we're going to read it in its entirety. His parents are Michael and Susan. Michael and Susan said, and I quote, "We are heartbroken, but also very angry. Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact." I do not throw around the word or the hero term lightly. However, his last thought and act was to protect a woman. The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Alex is clearly not holding a gun when attacked by Trump's murdering and cowardly ICE thugs. He was holding his phone in his right hand, and his empty left hand is raised above his head while trying to protect the woman ICE just pushed down, all while being pepper sprayed. Please get the truth about our son. He was a good man. Thank you. Imagine being a parent of a good child whom you love deeply, who has dedicated his life to serving other people, and all of a sudden you have to see this child, this son of yours, murdered on television with a false narrative about his intent being spewed from the very government you pay to support through taxes. Blood, sweat, tears. Quote, he cared about people deeply and was very upset with what was happening in Minneapolis and throughout the United States with ICE. As millions of other people are upset, Michael said, his father told the Associated Press on Saturday, shortly after his son's death. Quote, he thought it was terrible, kidnapping children, just grabbing people off the street. He cared about those people and he knew it was wrong, so he did participate in protest. The administration paints a narrative that protesters are somehow antithetical to the values of America, while at the same time supporting actual terrorists who decided to storm the Capitol because Trump, one, did not want to let go of power. They would tell you that protesters are somehow interfering with law enforcement. But I want to remind you that in the 60s, it was Dr. King who led protesters, volunteers who protested adverse, unethical, and immoral policies against human beings. Rosa Parks, protest. John Lewis, protest. If you disagree, you do protest. If you disagree with this administration and what they're doing, you do protest. Your protest. The demonstration or the participation of an active movement is the expression of that internal sentiment of protest. Don't allow them to frame the conversation, debate, discussion, and argument in a way that would suggest that somehow these folks are different than you. If you have been disgusted by what you've seen, you protest. And the protesters are an expression of your values, because I'm sure the administration damn sure is not. The family first learned of the shooting when they were called by an Associated Press reporter. It's a damn shame. They watched the video and said, the man killed appeared to be their son. They then tried reaching out to officials in Minnesota. Quote, I can't get any information from anybody, Michael, the father, said Saturday. The police, they said, called Border Patrol. Border Patrol's closed. The hospitals won't answer my question. He is being spun as a domestic terrorist by Kristi Noem and DHS, all because he was present at a protest legally concealed carrying, which Republicans love. Let's talk about the firearm, take it to the discussion.
If you watch all those videos carefully, you see a federal agent right there who appears to be removing a gun. This is very critical to remember. That piece of video you're seeing right there is happening about a second, or maybe slightly less than a second, before the shooting begins. Now, it is just video. We have to look at it. There will be a lot of questions here, but that's the reason people say you have to have a truly impartial and fair investigation here, because if he removed the gun before all this shooting broke out, then why is this man now dead?
Great question, CNN. And every other pundit. It's called murder. And just because you belong to a particular group, affiliation, etc., does not immune you from it. I'm disappointed that Minnesota has not effected an arrest, to be quite frank with you. Here's what came out of the press release. Here it is.
One of the agents had 8 years experience, and we know he was a less lethal instructor and had this training. What did the other agent, what was his history? And Are they both working right now, or are they on administrative leave?
All agents that were involved in that scene are working, not in Minneapolis, but in other locations. That's for their safety. There's this thing called doxing, and the safety of our employees is very important to us. So we're going to keep those employees safe. And politicians, community leaders, and some journalists engage in that heated rhetoric we keep talking about when they make the choice to vilify law enforcement, calling law enforcement names like Gestapo or using the term kidnapping. That is a choice that is made. There are actions and consequences that come from those choices. When you choose to listen to that, that is a choice, and there are consequences and actions there also. I think we saw that yesterday.
You chose to call a VA nurse a terrorist. There are consequences to those actions. One, the court of public opinion, because there are more decent people in this nation than people like you. You decided to back not one murder, but two that we are able to visibly see on video. And you chose to spin false narratives in order to cover for the people who are doing things that even those who supported this administration would have never wanted done, ever. Note his continuous Nazi cosplay and Nazi salute back in October. Speaking of free speech, a Minnesota toy shop criticized Trump, spoke about their efforts to hand out free whistles to customers, which they're used by community members to warn neighbors about DHS and ICE agents. Hours later, they were slammed with an audit. Governmental overreach, retaliation, violating an individual's right of free speech by utilizing the government in order to control it. That is a foundational principle of the Constitution. Your speech is protected from governmental intrusion. The government cannot limit your free speech by way of their massive authority, however it is happening. Now, they are utilizing others to do so by individuals who speak freely. Sometimes they utilize proxy campaigns, and sometimes they utilize the direct leverage of government. It will not stand. It will not last. The lies will not win. Lies travel fast because they know they have a limited time to live. The truth is eternal. Hold on to truth always. Why is the Trump administration obsessed with targeting Minneapolis? We've got our answer right here from Attorney General Pam Bondi. This is a letter to Tim Walz, the governor. It says, state of Minnesota has refused to enforce the law, and the consequences are heartbreaking. Americans are watching politicians ignore federal immigration law, criminals attack federal law enforcement and ride to storm church services. Our right to urge a change. In December 2025, the Department of Homeland Security launched Operation Metro Surge to protect Americans, blah, blah, blah. It's a prerequisite. That's a made-up element of this war on the American people in Minnesota currently. And if we don't stop it, it will be in a city near you. The first casualty of war is truth. This is, unfortunately, today's version of a civil war. It is unfortunate. It pains me to say, I don't say it lightly. I understand what it means legally, understand what it means ethically, morally. When you have people who are governed by an oppressive regime that they are forced to support, committing open execution with no consequence whatsoever against their own citizens, what do you call it? The reason why great men and women engaged in civil disobedience was to stop us from getting to elements of civil war. Some would argue that the terrorist attack that happened during that real extreme day of Trump's, Trump won his term running out when they stormed the Capitol. Some would say that was the beginning of this. Now we're learning that some of those individuals who criminally engaged trespass, assault, weapons violations, pardoned by Trump when he got back into office, some of those individuals are now ICE agents, according to the report. What this letter contains, let me give you the Walt's office must share state records on Medicaid and food and nutrition service programs, including SNAP, with the federal government. So they're saying that the governor has to share state records on Medicaid and food and nutrition services programs, including SNAP, with the federal government. 2, repeal sanctuary policies that have led to crime in Minnesota. Ridiculous. They actually lead to the reduction of crime if you do the research. All state correctional facilities must cooperate with ICE, honor immigration detainers, and permit ICE to interview detainees in custody to determine immigration status. 3, allow the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division to access Minnesota's voter rolls to confirm the state's voter registration policies comply with federal law. That's the reason they are in Minnesota. Why is Pam writing a note? Because they don't have the juice to pass a damn law. It's illegal what they are asking for. Big ups to the governor for standing up and saying no, hell no. So understand why this is happening in your state. Understand why this is happening in the state. And understand that if your state decides to have your back and not roll over because of the administration's insane policy of being adverse to their own people. If your state stands up for you, stand up for your state. In the exchange for bowing down, only then would DHS withdraw 3,000 ICE agents from the state. Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon refused to comply. Here it is, Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon responded with a statement Sunday saying, quote, "The answer to Attorney General Bondi's request is no." Simon called Bondi's letter an outrageous attempt to coerce Minnesota into giving the federal government private data on millions of U.S. citizens in violation of state and federal law, and said it followed repeated and failed attempts by the DOJ to pressure my office into providing the same data. How do we know it's illegal? Because if it were legal, the federal government can file an order of mandamus, which requires a federal agency to comply with existing law. There is no such motion because there is no such legal covering for Pam Bondi. Donald Trump put him up. So Trump has decided to send Tom Homan to Minnesota. I am sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He has not been involved in that area, but knows, and likes many other people there, Tom is tough but fair and will report directly to me. Separately, a major investigation is going on with respect to the massive $20 billion plus welfare fraud that is taking place in Minnesota and is at least partially responsible for the violent organized protests going on in the streets. Additionally, the DOJ and Congress are looking at Congresswoman Omar, who left Somalia with nothing and is now reportedly worth more than $44 million. Time will tell all. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. Let's look at some of the Democrats' responses. So the governor, Tim Walz, said, I just spoke with the White House after another horrific shooting by federal agents this morning. Minnesota has had it. This is sickening. The president must end this operation, pull the thousands of violent, untrained officers out of Minnesota. Now, Governor, once again, according to statute and case law, you have the authority, your law enforcement agency has the authority to arrest anyone within their jurisdiction who commits crime, even if they happen to work for a particular agency of law enforcement. This has been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court as well. The day of the murder. So the day of the murder, people on X shared fundraising messages they've received from political action committees that backed Kamala's campaign. So John Hagman, if you work for an organization or consultant that had anything to do with this, you need to quit your job today. Today. Put up a number. By Sunday morning, after the post went viral, the fundraiser was taken down. AOC said, quote, "We have a responsibility to protect Americans from tyranny. DHS just shot a man in broad daylight 2 weeks after they shot a mother in the face without consequence. They need our votes to continue. We cannot give it to them." That's right. Every senator should vote no. What is she talking about? She's talking about the DHS funding that we talked about on this show when I criticized Cory Booker and others for even nodding to the foolishness. That's what she's talking about. Will this be what it takes to defund ICE? Democratic senators now, after another murder, they are now vowing to block DHS funding after the latest Minneapolis shooting. You should have blocked it before the first murder because you saw it coming. And after the first murder, the rhetoric from ICE agents on record that we have the recording, hey, didn't you learn from what just happened? This is what they were telling people at the protest. Didn't you learn anything from what just happened? All right, Senator, I know you got a lot to say. Thoughts?
Yeah, Doc. I mean, just to amen everything. And I know you and I have moments often where we report on stories that are really, really heavy, and you show the requisite emotion to that. I love how you said the administration is just really flat out lying and telling us, the American people, not to believe our lying eyes. Yep. One of my contentions with mainstream media, and I have many, but heretofore, I keep hearing these analysts and reporters say, well, according to the White House's version. I mean, Doc, there is only one version here.
That's right.
And that's why I applaud you. I applaud us at TYT for giving it to you straight, no chaser. The video and every angle of the video is absolutely clear. CNN and other news outlets have done a methodical analysis, frame by frame, of these countless videos. And so at this point, Doc, I'm tired of hearing reporters or media personalities talking about the administration's version. The administration's version is a flat out lie, and call it what it is. The man has sued, media outlets before. You won't be the first and you won't be the last. They're lying. Kristi Noem got up there and straight up lied, and everybody in the chain is lying. And what they do, and this is not new. None of this is new. It may be new to a certain generation, but this has happened before. McCarthyism. This has happened before. Black Panthers and other civil rights and justice-seeking, liberating type groups or people, their reputations being maligned to justify the government and other actors for doing what they're doing right now to Nicole Good, Renee Nicole Good, and also to Alex Pretti. But let us not forget, the first person killed by ICE was a man by the name of Keith Porter, who was killed by an off-duty ICE agent on New Year's Eve in Los Angeles. He was the first to die. So let's make sure that we say his name. It wasn't under the same circumstances, but by the same occupying force, which is ICE. Doc, ICE, their budget was increased under Biden.
That's right.
So I'm sick and tired of these Democrats, even the ones who are saying the right thing on social media. If you're not going to use social media to tell us what your next steps are, I don't want to hear it, because you have the power to stop this. Doc, breaking news, the Senate Democrats plot strategy as DHS standoff deepens heading into shutdown week. Schumer told Democrats the caucus unified and message is restraint, reform, and restrict ICE. You can't reform this.
That's
and
right.
some high-paid lobbyists, some high-paid consultant, have told these fools that alliteration, Doc, you and I know, that alliteration, which sounds good, restrain, reform, and restrict ICE, is going to do the trick. When you got thousands of people in Minnesota in the coldest of weather pouring out into the streets, and you got countless thousands around this country and the world locking arm in arm in solidarity, they executed this man right before our eyes. And the reason why they knew he had a weapon is because they knocked the man down and it fell out. He never once pointed that weapon at anybody, as you laid out, Doc, trying to protect a woman who they pushed to the ground. You know what, Doc, I ain't hear none of them say this when Kyle Rittenhouse in 2020 went to Kenosha, Wisconsin. He had a rifle strapped to him.
That's right.
There was civil unrest in that city, in that area, over the shooting of Jacob Blake. This man walking around with the rifle right in front of police officers. I ain't hear a word. Matter of fact, President Trump and others like him saluted this man and said he had a right. Just like that nurse had a right to have his weapon, didn't have it out or anything. The January 6th people, same thing. They didn't kill police. So this stuff, I need people to make it make sense. And then when it comes to the local officials, Doc, as you laid out, my frustration with the governor and with the mayor, use your authority and double dog dare the federal government to come for you, because you got more protection than the average Minnesotan.
Yep.
Arrest these people. Now, one thing I'm glad that they are doing is in the courts, Doc, I don't know if the judge has ruled yet, but for them to be able to take over the investigation or be a part of the investigation, I applaud them to that. Like, I'm just sick of these elected officials trying to act like they powerless. What do you think about the citizens are putting everything on the line to show that this authoritarian government is out of hand, this fascism is out of hand? And another point here, this is not Nazism. I want the American people to stop using that and making us think that somehow ICE is a foreign force to the United States of America. No, they are Confederates, baby. Where do you think the Nazis learned their maneuvers? They learned it from the good old US of A, the tactics that Confederates used against Black bodies, Black minds, and Black hearts. And you minimize that when you call it Nazism. And Doc, some people doing it out of ignorance, and other people are doing it because they just can't bear the thought that how ICE is comporting itself is purely American. I want you to wrap your mind around that. And my last point on a whole bunch of points we can make is that ICE did not exist prior to 2003. Let me say that again. ICE as an agency did not exist prior to 2003. What's your point, Senator? My point is this, is that we can protect our borders. We need immigration reform that several presidents and Congresses have failed to do, and you don't need ICE to do it. It is a stain. Right. It is an abomination, Doc. And at one point, I was feeling sorry for the agents in a way. I was saying, they being told to do this stuff by people with suits, but they are responsible for how they comport themselves. Now it's like, y'all know what it is. And they are enjoying, most of them, being able to rough up American citizens in this way and even take their lives because they have the blessing of the president of the United States. They have the blessing, seemingly, of the president of the United States, of Christy Nome, and whoever that dude was, that fella I'm blanking on his name, the guy that was up there telling the lie. They the whole chain, they have their blessings to violate the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. They want to talk about law and order. There is no law and order when it comes to how this administration is comporting itself and putting this occupied territory, which is Minnesota. DC is an enemy occupied. Let me put enemy occupied territories in the United States of America. Doc, this is outrageous. And I'm glad that we're taking so much time on this, and especially to Alex's family. To his family, who do not deserve this. But this is what propaganda does. This is what a government out of control does. They try to malign the integrity of the victim and try to get us to believe it. And Doctor, some fools out there who believe this nonsense.
Yeah, that's why the parents
said, if he hadn't had this, if he hadn't did this, if he hadn't, he did absolutely nothing wrong.
That's right. His life, model citizen, all the words, all the great things you can say about a human being have been said. So the administration doesn't have the room in their propaganda machine in order to muddy him up, to deflect from the reality of what happened to him. However,
and Doc, can we go back to that one? And it's just so, it's a shame that this had to happen to somebody who had to be that perfect.
Exactly.
And I'm being sarcastic, right?
Yep.
Because during the civil rights movement, we know that the strategy, because the burden on Black people to be perfect human beings, to be able to get what we deserve as being citizens and humans on this earth, you had to put forward perfect people to be able to fight anti-Black racism and white supremacy. All of that we see that is happening at the hands of ICE comes from that.
That's right. Well said. And I remind people, when King was leading those movements, his approval rating by the average American was 6%.
Come on.
Okay. Nonviolent, peaceful protests, talking about unifying America. Less than 10% of white folk supported that notion during the time he was living. And if you supported King, the government called you a communist.
That's right.
Which back then was basically akin to terrorist. And so it was a reputation dynamic. Same thing is happening today.